but I can assure you one thing, it's a fantastic tale. Of course, I'm referring to the story told by my guest, George Adamski. I have a couple of books here, one that he wrote with Desmond Leslie. It's called, well, let me look and find out myself, Flying Saucers Have Landed. And we also have one other written by George Adamski. The title of it is Inside the Spaceship. And we're going to get the facts about the interior of the spaceships right now from our guest, George Adamski. George, when was the first time that you were invited to be a guest in a flying saucer?
Well, I don't remember exactly the date, but it was the second time I met this man. See, I met him on...
the one we talked about last time.
That's correct. Mm-hmm. And he took me out to what they call a mothership, which is the long one. And then I observed everything in there as much as I could. And there's a panel job in the ship, what we call where the pilots sit. They don't have the same kind of controls we have. That's the one, yeah. Same kind of controls we have, but rather they have a lot of buttons. And there's graphs on the wall.
Now, if I may interrupt you for a moment, the photograph that we have on camera now, George, is this a photograph of a mothership?
Well, this is a photograph of a mothership right here, and these here are saucers which this mothership have released to come, we call scouts, scouting around.
Is the mothership actually cigar-shaped, or is that a distortion?
No, it's a cigar-shape with a blunt nose and blunt ends.
Now, you are starting to describe the interior.
That's correct.
So, supposing we use this, I think this will be of interest, and if you'll be kind enough to describe it, please.
This chute here is the one they let out the scout ships from, down to the bottom. This chute here, when they come back, return to land like they do on the flat top and go inside. And this is a rail right in here where they park. And down here are the quarters. The pilots are in this section as well as in this section. You can go backwards or forwards if it's necessary, as well as sideways, and so forth. So the pilots, while the quarters are all underneath, this is a magnetic rail on which the saucer, so-called, rests when it gets back there, and they must be charged. They can't accumulate the power themselves, so they're usually charged by the mothership in most cases. Now, they watch every movement the pilots do in there by big graphs, similar to a neon sign of many colors. And as these colors come up in intensity in various angles, that's when they know how the ship is behaving, what the field force to the outside is, and they don't do nothing about it except push buttons in a case like that. There's a big robot system. The whole thing is operated by a robot. The ships are moving so fast that even their human mind, further advanced than ours, could not cope with.
How do you know that their minds are further advanced than ours?
Well,
George?
due to the scientific development that we're just now beginning to realize and begin to adventure into that state with the NASA program, which has been set up by our government involving 82 nations of the world.
The question that I'd like to ask you in reference to the mothership, did somebody give you an actual diagram of the mothership so that you could draw the one that we've just seen on camera?
Well, I've stayed long enough to make a rough drawing. I'm not a good artist.
How long were you in a mothership?
In the mothership, well, on several occasions I was in a mothership, but then this one in particular that we're talking about, where I took the drawing, I was in there about 3.5 hours.
Did they feel rather disturbed about the fact that you were interested in making a drawing?
No, they weren't. Yet I tried to photograph and do that electrical energy or magnetic influence in there. Our film didn't seem to be taken very well.
It would seem to me that if these people, incidentally, this was a Venusian mothership, right?
That's correct, but the Saturnian is not much different, except the Saturnian ship that we speak of was a laboratory ship. A lot of scientists on it.
George, it would seem to me that if these people want to cooperate with you, or want your assistance, that they would certainly give you a diagram rather than having you run around for 3.5 valuable hours drawing pictures of the interior of the ship.
Well, maybe they had one there, maybe they didn't. That's something I don't know. But mere fact that that diagram and a few other things that I have gotten that way, and like the symbols that came in with that first book, they have now been deciphered, and I understand their ships under construction just according to the plan that is already deciphered from those, from the footprint.
I had no plans on this. I hope that our director will be able to pick this up. If you can come in a little closer on this. I had no plans to show it, but George has mentioned it, and therefore it may be of some interest. You want to briefly describe what this is that we're looking at?
That was a plaque dropped on December the 13th from the ship, and we never knew what it was. The University of Michigan tried to decipher it. They got a little ways and they couldn't make it. So it has been deciphered in Africa, in South Africa there, and also at other places. And construction of a ship is under process now, according to the decipher.
In Africa?
Yeah, yes, and I think the man eventually will be down here. At
Who's
least
building it?
Well, the man himself, in his own laboratory, has built it to prove up what he found in those funny markings to be true.
George, the thing that amazes me in your story, and I must admit you're a very likable gentleman, I'd also like to tell our viewers that Mr. Adamski is 69 years of age, and right here in the studio, and I've been talking to him for some time now, and I talked to him the last time we did a discussion program with him. He appears to be possibly 50 or 55 at the most, and he's a very likable individual. But one thing that I cannot understand, if you have these contacts with the Venusians or the Saturnians or the Martians, and they evidently have chosen you to assist them in some way, they've honored you with this position, why is it that they make it so difficult for you by sending down such nonsense as we have in the back of the book?
The truth is that it deals with what we call electromagnetic forces.
What deals with it? The message?
No, the message, yes. Deals with the power, what we call natural power, that is responsible for revolving our Earth at 18.5 miles per second, including every planet in the space. And if just an ordinary person that might be mischievous would hook onto that power, he could destroy you and I by disintegration law.
What was the reason then for dropping this message to you?
And in order that I might get somebody, which I finally, after a few years, we have found somebody that was able to decipher these and finally come up with a construction of a spacecraft.
George, I'm not getting through to you. If they hope that somebody on this planet will be able to figure this out, wouldn't it be much simpler, because they have confidence in you, to say, George, we're going to give you the technical account of flying saucers and their working method of propulsion, but we're going to write it for you in English. Wouldn't this be the simplest way, instead of looking for a man in Africa?
Well, that I don't know whether they write in English or they don't. They talk in English, so they should be able to write in English.
Couldn't they talk to you in English, and wouldn't it be possible for you to write?
Yes, I imagine it would be, but they haven't done so. Instead, they dropped this plate. At that time, they dropped this plate. I haven't even talked to them.
George, I have a picture here that to me is extremely interesting. I don't know. We'll leave it right here. This photograph here shows the portholes of a mothership or scout ship?
That's a mothership.
Mothership. Now, I don't think our viewers at home can read the fine print underneath here, the caption. Would you be kind enough to tell us the reason that we make so much of this particular photograph and point to the
reason?
Because
there's Orton in there and myself in there in the ship, and it was taken from a scout ship.
Now, wait a minute, we're going too fast. Repeat that again. You are in this
inside of that
mothership?
Ship. That's correct.
And somebody else photographed this?
Yes, with my own camera.
Where were they at the time?
That was a Polaroid camera. They were in a saucer. In other words, they picked me up, took me to the mothership with a saucer. The saucer went away with my camera far enough away to get fair pictures as they could get it, to photograph after we have placed ourselves.
Well, I don't understand. Who was the other person?
Well,
I mean, a Martian or a Venusian?
Well, they were both in that ship. There were Martians and Venusians. Which one I operated the camera, I don't know.
I'm not trying to get too technical, but how do you know that that's your head in that porthole there?
Well,
can we see this? And how do you know that it's Orthon's in that one?
Well,
they look pretty similar to me.
I don't quite know from this picture, but this picture, the original pictures before they even put in the book, you can tell the difference from the original, yes.
In other words, what you're saying, George, the reproduction here is rather poor.
Yeah, blurred and too much.
George, I don't know. You got me beat when you talk about all these things. But we're going to have to take, I don't know what they do on Venus or Mars, but back here on this planet, page 132, primary drive, I presume that you're referring to space drive,
Mm-hmm.
used for very high speeds. The ship controls are placed in synchronous frequency with the universal energy flows, which exists in all space, but slightly out of phase with them. Speed depends upon the degree of phase angle, which depends upon the amount of shading power. What's that mean,
That's
George?
good. That's all right. Just if I had two magnets right here, I could show it to you how slightly out of phase one magnet with the other will kick the other one away. And on a spaceship that you saw the pictures of earlier, you will find there's three balls, we call them condensers. If they cut one off, it'll throw the ship out of phase in one direction. If they cut the other one off, they throw it in another direction, so down the line. The same person.
They're
principle.
called condensers?
Yeah, we call them condensers because that's where the power. If they cut it off, then it has a tendency to sway the ship the other way. One is operating, and two is operating, and the other one is not. Either one they cut off, it'll throw the ship in that direction.
All right, these are some of the rough questions. I'm just rehearsing for the night that maybe we can get, or the day whenever it'll be when we can get Jules St. Germain. George Adamski, did you ever use the title of professor in connection with your lectures or writings?
No, I have never used the title professor. It was given to me, although the word professor, even a plumber can be called a professor in the plumbing field. Anything that he does and what I'm working with.
Well, when you say it was given to you, awarded to you by a recognized university?
Oh, no, never by a recognized university or any other branch except a common folks that like me that much and nickname me that way.
Professor.
That's right. That's right.
But you use that title when you write?
No.
Have you ever?
No.
You've never written a book referring to yourself as Professor George Adamski?
No, I've written one little pamphlet one time that I did.
All right, fine. Now, did you ever did you ever lead people to believe that you were associated with the Palomar Observatory?
I have never been associated with Palomar Observatory or any government agency of any kind at any time. I had a lot of friends at Palomar which were scientists, and I associated with them and then liked them very much and learned much from them in reference to astronomy, but never associated with any branch like that.
Back on the 20th day of November in the year of 1952, and I think you related this to us a few minutes ago, you told us about your experience out in the desert when you met the first Venusian. Did you have a doctor with you, and if so, what was his doctorate in?
Dr. Williamson, which was a doctor of anthropology. I understand that he had an honorary degree from the University of Arizona. Whether he did or not, I don't know, but I do know that his wife had a straight degree from the University of Arizona in the same field, which is anthropology.
How are you so confident, or so certain, rather, that Mrs. George Hunt Williamson has the degree, whereas her husband, he may or may not have?
I saw the degree.
You saw the degree?
Yes, I am.
Mm-hmm. Why do you have so much confidence in George Hunt Williamson?
I don't have all the confidence some people might say. I don't mistrust anybody, but a mere fact that he said that he had a degree, which I have not seen, I accepted as such due to his wife.
You say, George, that you...
He is a good researcher.
You say that you do not mistrust anybody.
No.
Well, that would lead me to believe that you have such complete confidence in anybody that I could possibly tell you that I'm from another planet and you'd go along with it.
Well, not exactly.
And possibly write a book next year.
Not exactly, because I would get a feeling what you're deceiving me or not. I go by
How do you get this feeling?
Well,
intuition?
Well, that's right. We call it intuition and so on and so forth.
Let's get back to the 20th day of November, the year of 1952. Why did you feel that George Adamski would be picked for the contact? In other words, did you go out in the desert with these other people expecting to be contacted by a Venusian?
No, I have not. That was purely an accident, and I'm not the only one in this world that have made a contact, because there's 2,500 such a contactees throughout the world. I have learned that on this trip especially.
Where did we get this figure, 2,500?
Well, I got it in different places where the different groups, so-called organized saucer groups, had records of this one claiming that and then another one claiming something else and on the line.
How many people do you think there are in the United States that have had legitimate contact with people from other planets?
It'll be a little hard to say because I haven't met them all.
Approximately?
Approximately about 5.
Boy, you take away some names right away, in my mind, if there's only 5. Well, if there's been 2,500...
I mean genuine.
Yeah, that's what I'm referring to, too. If there's been 2,500 in the entire world on this planet that have had contact with people from other planets, I was trying to figure it out. That would leave 2,495 in other countries.
Well, let me classify this now. After I have gotten to talking to some of them and got into depth of it when I had time on this world's trip, I would have cut them down to about 500 genuines out of 2,500. The others mostly mental or wishful thinking.
The book, Inside the Spaceship, is that book based on fact, or did you use
absolute fact,
writer's license to sort of fictionalize
Let me put it this way. It is based on an absolute fact. I'm 69, as you have told the public already. I know that I've got to change living quarters someday, not too far off. And as I do, I'm not a coward, but why should I make my condition by lying or doing anything like this worse than for the future when I know, as far as I'm concerned, that there is a future for me?
I'll tell you one thing, George. We're going to have to break away for a moment because my future is going to be behind me. If with George Adamski, the man that claims that he's been talking to Martians, Venusians, Saturnians, and what have you. George, a couple of more questions. Did you take all of the photographs in Flying Saucers Have Landed?
No, I haven't. The publisher put some in there that I haven't taken.
Were you credited for the pictures that you didn't take?
No, they were credited to the proper source.
Fine. Back on December 13th, you took a photograph, or somebody did, a close-up of the ping-pong ball saucer. I'm talking about the one that we've shown tonight.
That's right.
Did you take that?
I took that through the 6-inch telescope.
And you really believe that that's a legitimate flying saucer?
Absolutely. And up to date, many of them try to duplicate it, has failed completely.
It's pretty easy to duplicate, but that doesn't mean that it's a fake.
No, well, it's still, they haven't come up with anything like that. Besides, this particular pattern has been now adopted, and I understand is used by at least 2 nations try to build a ship like it.
All right. Now, are there any copies left of Pioneers in Space, which you personally published in the year 1949?
There's none left because I only published 350 for the student body that I had at that time. They weren't really sold to the public in general.
Did the Navy really buy up 50 copies of Pioneers in Space as reported in Fate magazine?
That I don't know if they have, and if they bought it up, I don't know where they'd get them, because there was not that surplus, or I don't think that many people would have sold them.
Another additional question. Is it true that back in the year of 1942, you submitted a fiction story to Amazing Stories which closely resembled your so-called fact story?
That is not true, because I was breaking ground, clearing ground at Palomar Gardens at that time, working very hard and had no time for writing. Didn't even think about writing at that time.
George, a rough question, a very, very rough one. Have you refused to take a lie detector test?
No, I haven't.
You never have?
Never have.
Has it ever been offered to you?
Yes, but I've also involved other people that I knew would know the truth to have take the lie detector test with me at the same time.
I have no interest in suggesting this to you, but if one of my viewers suggested that you should take a lie detector test, would you?
Sure.
Thank you. We're going to try to get George back with us in a couple of weeks, and possibly we can have Jules St. Germain, the attorney from Lynbrook, Long Island, with us. Until, get your aura checked.